London, December 1941. The Czechoslovak government in exile occupies a modest building in Porchester Gate, and inside a second-floor briefing room, 7 men sit in silence. They're soldiers, paratroopers, trained by British SOE instructors at secret facilities across Scotland. They've endured months of conditioning, weapons training, demolitions, silent killing, survival behind enemy lines. But the briefing they're about to receive isn't about sabotaging rail lines or gathering intelligence. They're here to kill Reinhard Heydrich. Heydrich, SS Obergruppenführer, Chief of the Reich Security Main Office, Architect of the Einsatzgruppen Death Squads, Principal Organizer of the Final Solution. The man Heinrich Himmler calls the man with the iron heart. The man Adolf Hitler considers his ideal successor. He's not a battlefield general or a distant bureaucrat. He's the operational brain behind the Holocaust, and he's currently running Czechoslovakia as Reichsprotector of Bohemia and Moravia. The mission is called Operation Anthropoid. The objective, political assassination on occupied soil. The British SOE and the Czechoslovak government have calculated that killing Heydrich will prove to the Allies and to the Czech people that resistance is still alive. Even the men orchestrating genocide can be reached. 2 men will execute the attack. Josef Gabčík, a Slovak sergeant with a methodical temperament and sniper training, and Jan Kubiš, a Czech corporal known for his bomb-making precision. 5 others will support them on the ground. Intelligence gathering, safe houses, logistics. They'll be inserted separately, dropped by RAF bombers into the Protectorate during the winter of 1941-42. The odds are suffocating. Heydrich travels with armed SS escorts. Prague is under total surveillance. Gestapo informants, Wehrmacht patrols, collaborationist police. The resistance networks are fragmented, paranoid, decimated by previous crackdowns. And if the mission succeeds, Hitler's reprisal will be catastrophic. The briefing officer doesn't sugarcoat this. Entire villages might be liquidated. The assassins themselves have no realistic chance of escape. Gabčík and Kubiš volunteer anyway. They understand what's at stake. Czechoslovakia was dismembered in 1938 at Munich, betrayed by Britain and France, then fully occupied in March 1939. The government in exile in London is fighting for legitimacy, for recognition that Czechoslovakia still exists as a nation, that its people haven't simply accepted Nazi rule. It would force the world to see that Czechs and Slovaks are still fighting. Training intensifies. Gabčík practices with the Sten submachine gun, 9mm 32-round magazine, effective at close range but prone to jamming if not maintained perfectly. Kubiš perfects his modified anti-tank grenades designed to fragment on impact. They memorize Prague's streets, Heydrich's routes, the timing of his commute from his villa in Panenské Břežany to Prague Castle. They study photographs until they can identify him instantly. December fades into early 1942. The drop date approaches. On the night of December 28, 1941, Gabčík and Kubiš board an RAF Halifax bomber at Tangmere Airfield. The flight crosses German-occupied Europe under cover of darkness, over France, over Germany itself, threading between flak corridors and Luftwaffe night fighter patrols. At 0217 hours, the red light flashes. The jump door opens. Wind screams into the fuselage. They jump into Czechoslovakia. The parachutes deploy. Below them, snow-covered fields stretch toward the Protectorate's interior. They're 15 miles from Prague. The temperature is 9 degrees below zero. They're carrying pistols, explosives, false identity papers, and a mission that will change the course of the war. They land hard. Kubiš injures his ankle on impact. They bury their parachutes and British uniforms, then move toward the nearest village. Within hours, they make contact with a resistance cell, a family willing to risk everything to hide them. The family doesn't ask questions. They know what harboring Allied agents means: torture, execution, concentration camps for their children. Gabčík and Kubiš are inside Nazi-occupied Europe. The most wanted men in the Reich don't know it yet, but in 6 months the world will. Reinhard Heydrich arrives in Prague on September 27, 1941, and within 72 hours the executions begin. He's 37 years old. Tall, blonde, athletic, a fencer, a pilot, a violinist. He speaks perfect French and English. He's married with 3 children. And he's responsible for the murder of over 1 million people. Heydrich's resume reads like a blueprint for totalitarian terror. He joined the SS in 1931, rising rapidly under Heinrich Himmler's patronage. By 1934, he's running the Gestapo. By 1939, he's chief of the Reich Security Main Office, the RSHA, consolidating the Gestapo, the SD Intelligence Service, and the criminal police under one apparatus. He chairs the Wannsee Conference in January 1942, where the administrative machinery of the final solution is formalized, the deportation schedules, the gas chambers, the logistics of industrial genocide. But Hitler has another use for him. Czechoslovakia, or what's left of it, has become a problem. After the Munich Agreement carved up the country in 1938 and the Wehrmacht occupation completed the job in March 1939, the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia was established. It's a puppet state, technically autonomous but in reality controlled by Berlin. The previous Reichsprotector, Konstantin von Neurath, governed with a relatively light touch. He allowed limited Czech autonomy, permitted cultural institutions, avoided mass arrests. This is unacceptable to Hitler. Czech war production is critical to the German war machine. The Škoda works in Pilsen produce tanks, artillery, munitions, but resistance activity is increasing. Sabotage, strikes, underground radio broadcasts. In London, the Czechoslovak government in exile under President Edvard Beneš is broadcasting messages urging non-cooperation. Berlin needs the Protectorate pacified, not with concessions but with terror. So they send Heydrich. He arrives with full executive authority. His mandate: crush resistance, maximize production, Germanize the region. Within days, he declares martial law. The Czech Prime Minister, Alois Eliáš, is arrested, tried in a show trial, and executed. Heydrich calls it cleaning house. Then the arrests accelerate. Gestapo units sweep through Prague, Brno, Ostrava. Resistance members are dragged from their homes at night. Interrogations are conducted in the Petček Palace, the Gestapo headquarters in Prague, where screams echo through the basement cells. Suspects are tortured with electric shocks, beaten, submerged in ice water until they break. Informants are cultivated. Networks collapse. In the first 3 weeks of Heydrich's rule, 342 people are executed. Most are resistance members. Some are labor leaders, intellectuals, suspected communists. A few are simply in the wrong place when the Gestapo needs to fill a quota. But Heydrich doesn't rule through fear alone. He's smarter than that. He understands that total repression breeds martyrs, and martyrs inspire more resistance. So he introduces what he calls the carrot and the whip. Czech workers receive increased food rations. Social security is expanded. Cultural performances are permitted, operas, concerts, theatre, as long as they're apolitical. Heydrich opens public baths, cinemas, vacation resorts for Czech workers who meet production quotas. It works. War production in the Protectorate increases by 13% in the first 6 months of Heydrich's administration. The Czech people, exhausted by war and occupation, accept the bargain, obedience in exchange for survival. The resistance networks that remain go even deeper underground, fragmented and isolated. Heydrich begins to believe he's untouchable. He orders his SS bodyguards to travel in a separate car behind him. He rides through Prague in an open-top Mercedes without armor, without a security escort in the front seat. It's a calculated display of confidence, proof that the Reichsprotector fears nothing, that Czech resistance is broken. His daily routine becomes predictable. Every morning he departs his villa in Panenské Břežany at approximately 9:30 hours. His driver, SS Oberscharführer Johannes Klein, takes the same route, north into Prague on the road toward the suburb of Liben, then a sharp hairpin turn at the intersection of V. Holešovička Street before continuing to Prague Castle. The The turn forces the Mercedes to slow to 15 kilometers per hour. Heydrich makes this commute 6 days a week. The British SOE knows this. The Czechoslovak intelligence officers in London know this. And by March 1942, after 3 months of hiding in safe houses, moving between Prague apartments, and making contact with what's left of the resistance, Gabčík and Kubiš know this too. They begin surveillance. They watch the Mercedes pass. They time the route. They identify the exact curve where the car slows. They select a tram stop where they can wait without attracting attention. They plan the escape routes, side streets. The night of December 28, 1941 is moonless and bitterly cold. 2 Halifax bombers, one carrying Gabčík and Kubiš, the other carrying 3 additional paratroopers for a separate mission, cross into Protectorate airspace at 0200 hours. The crews fly low to avoid radar, navigating by dead reckoning over the snow-covered landscape of occupied Europe. The drop zone is near Nevisdy, a village 15 miles east of Prague. The plan calls for a precision jump at 500 feet, low enough to minimize drift, high enough to allow the parachutes to deploy fully. But navigation over enemy territory at night is an imperfect science. Cloud cover obscures landmarks, wind speed estimates prove inaccurate. The green light flashes. Gabčík goes first, then Kubiš. They fall through darkness. The parachutes snap open with violent deceleration. Below them, the ground rushes up faster than expected. Kubiš hits hard. His left ankle folds beneath him on impact. Pain shoots up his leg. He collapses in the snow, biting back a shout. Gabčík lands 30 meters away, rolling to absorb the impact. He's up immediately, gathering his parachute. They've missed the drop zone by nearly 4 miles. They're in open farmland, exposed. The parachutes are white against dark earth, visible for hundreds of meters if anyone is watching. They bury them quickly, along with their British uniforms, RAF issue boots and jump helmets. They change into civilian Czech clothing carried in waterproof pouches. Gabčík helps Kubiš to his feet. The ankle is sprained, possibly fractured. Kubiš can walk, but barely. They move east, away from the drop zone, staying off roads. The temperature is 8 degrees below 0 Celsius. Their breath forms clouds. Every sound, the crunch of snow, the snap of a frozen branch, feels deafening. They know Gestapo protocol. Any report of parachutes triggers immediate sweeps, roadblocks, interrogations of every household within 10 kilometers. By dawn, they've covered 3 miles. They're exhausted, frozen, and Kubiš is limping badly. They need shelter. They need a resistance contact. But the network is fragmented. SOE lost radio contact with several Czech cells during the autumn Gestapo crackdowns. Gabčík and Kubiš have a list of potential safe houses, but no guarantee any of them are still operational. They approach a farmhouse outside Nevisdy. It's a calculated risk. The family could be collaborators. They could panic and report the strangers to the local gendarmerie, or they could be patriots. Gabčík knocks. A woman answers, middle-aged, eyes widening when she sees 2 men in civilian clothes, one clearly injured, at her door before sunrise. Gabčík speaks quickly in Czech. "We need help. We're from London." The words hang in the cold air. The woman stares at them. Then she steps aside and opens the door. Her name is never recorded in the mission reports. This is deliberate. SOE protocols protect the identities of resistance families, but she hides them in her cellar for 3 days while word is sent to Prague. Kubiš's ankle is wrapped. They eat their first hot meal since leaving England, and they wait. On the 3rd day, a resistance courier arrives. His name is Josef Valčík, a Czech paratrooper who dropped into the Protectorate 2 months earlier on a separate mission. He's established contact with what remains of the Prague resistance network. He guides Gabčík and Kubiš into the city. Prague in January 1942 is a city of surveillance and silence. Wehrmacht soldiers patrol the streets. Gestapo plainclothes agents watch tram stops, cafes, train stations. Checkpoints demand papers at random intervals. Informants are everywhere. Waiters, shopkeepers, neighbors incentivized with money or threatened with arrest. The Czech population has learned to keep their heads down, avoid eye contact, speak only when necessary. Gabčík and Kubiš move through this city like ghosts. They're assigned false identities. Gabčík becomes a mechanic, Kubiš a clerk. Resistance families rotate them between safe houses every few days to avoid detection. They never stay in one location long enough for neighbors to ask questions. They memorize cover stories, where they work, where they're from, why they're in Prague, but their real work begins immediately. They need intelligence. Heydrich's schedule, his security detail, his routes. The resistance provides fragments, rumors, observations from workers at Prague Castle, second-hand reports from police informants. Slowly, a pattern emerges. Heydrich departs his villa in Panenské Břežany between 09:15 and 09:45 hours. He takes the same road into Prague. His Mercedes is a dark green convertible, often with the top down. He sits in the front passenger seat. His driver is SS Oberscharführer Klein. A second car with SS bodyguards follows 50 to 100 meters behind. The vulnerable point is the hairpin turn at the V. Holešovičkách intersection in the Líben district. The Mercedes must slow to less than 20 kilometers per hour to navigate the curve. For approximately 8 seconds, the car is exposed, moving slowly enough for a Sten gun burst or a thrown grenade to be effective. Gabčík and Kubiš begin surveillance in March. They take the tram to Líben, dressed as workers. They loiter at the tram stop across from the hairpin turn, watching cars pass. They time the morning commute. They note the presence or absence of Wehrmacht patrols. They identify escape routes, side streets leading to the Líben district, a bicycle hidden in an alley, a safe house 4 blocks away. And they wait for the right weather, the right day, the right moment when Heydrich's car slows at the curve. Living underground in occupied Prague is a slow war of nerves. Gabčík and Kubiš rotate between safe houses every 5 to 7 days. They're hidden by ordinary Czech families, factory workers, clerks, shopkeepers, people with children, people who understand that discovery means execution. The Gestapo's standard protocol for harboring enemies of the Reich is immediate arrest, interrogation under torture, then transportation to Mauthausen or execution on site. Children are sent to concentration camps or forcibly Germanized, adopted into SS families, their identities erased. These families hide them anyway. One safe house belongs to the Moravec family. Josef Moravec is a senior resistance organizer. His wife, Marie, runs the household with quiet efficiency. Their son, Artur, 17 years old, serves as a courier, carrying messages between resistance cells, moving weapons in suitcases on trams, conducting surveillance. The Moravecs know the risks. They've already lost friends to the Gestapo. They hide Gabčík and Kubiš in a concealed space behind a false wall in the attic. The paratroopers live like prisoners. They cannot go outside during daylight unless absolutely necessary. They read by candlelight, books, newspapers, anything to pass the hours. They disassemble and clean their weapons obsessively. Gabčík's Sten gun. They memorize Prague's streets using pre-war maps, tracing escape routes with their fingers. The psychological strain is constant. Every knock on the door could be the Gestapo. Every unfamiliar voice in the street could be an informant. The families hiding them maintain routines, going to work, shopping for rations, attending church, while concealing deadly secrets. One slip, one overheard conversation, one suspicious neighbor, and everyone dies. By April 1942, Gabčík and Kubiš have been in Prague for 4 months. Their original insertion was in late December. They've conducted surveillance on Heydrich's route. They've identified the kill zone, but authorization from London has not arrived. The Czechoslovak government in exile and British SOE are debating the consequences. The intelligence estimates are unambiguous. If Heydrich is killed, Nazi reprisals will be catastrophic. Hundreds, possibly thousands of Czech civilians will die. President Edvard Beneš understands this. He also understands that Czechoslovakia is disappearing. After Munich, after the occupation, after 2 years of collaboration and pacification under Heydrich's carrot and whip policy, the world is forgetting that Czechoslovakia exists as a nation. The resistance is fragmented. Czech workers are producing tanks for the Wehrmacht. The Allies are beginning to view the Protectorate as a compliant German territory, not an occupied state. An assassination would shatter that perception. It would force the Allies to recognize Czech resistance. It would prove that collaboration is not universal, that Czechs are still fighting. The order reaches Prague in early May via coded BBC radio broadcast. The phrase is innocuous to anyone listening. The silver lining is in the clouds. To Gabčík and Kubiš, it means proceed. They finalize the plan. The attack will happen at the V. Holešovičkách hairpin turn in Libeň. Gabčík will fire the Sten gun at point-blank range as the Mercedes slows. Kubiš will throw a modified anti-tank grenade if the gun fails. Josef Valčík will serve as lookout, positioned 100 meters up the road with a signal mirror to flash when Heydrich's car approaches. Jan Hruby, another paratrooper, will provide backup security. After the attack, they'll escape on bicycles to a pre-arranged safe house, then disperse into Prague's underground. They rehearse the attack repeatedly in a safe house basement. Kubiš practices the throwing motion. Arm back, step forward, release at chest height. They time every movement. 7 seconds from the signal to the first shot. 3 seconds for the grenade. 10 seconds to reach the bicycles. They select May 27, 1942. The weather forecast predicts clear skies. Heydrich will be in Prague that day. He's scheduled to attend meetings at the castle. It's a Wednesday. Traffic will be moderate. The tram schedule puts a southbound tram at the intersection at approximately 10:30 hours, providing visual cover. The night before, Gabčík and Kubiš stay at separate safe houses. They do not sleep. Gabčík disassembles and reassembles his Sten gun 3 times, checking the magazine spring tension, cleaning the bolt mechanism. The Sten is notoriously unreliable, cheap British manufacture, prone to jamming if dirt enters the action. He lubricates it carefully. Kubiš checks his grenades. They're modified number 73 anti-tank grenades, designed to fragment on impact. He's wrapped them with additional shrapnel, nails, bolts, metal fragments, to maximize casualties. He places them gently in a leather briefcase. Morning comes. May 27, 1942, 08:30 hours. Gabčík leaves his safe house first, dressed in a dark coat and cap. He carries the Sten gun concealed under his coat, the barrel pressed against his leg. Kubiš departs separately, limping slightly. His ankle from the parachute drop still aches. He carries the briefcase. Valčík positions himself up the street with a pocket mirror. At 09:45 hours, they're in position at the tram stop. Pedestrians pass. A few workers wait for the southbound tram. No one pays attention to 2 men in dark coats. At 10:27 hours, Valčík flashes the mirror. Heydrich's green Mercedes is coming. The Mercedes appears at the top of the hill, moving at approximately 40 kilometers per hour. It's a dark green convertible, top down, despite the morning chill. Reinhard Heydrich sits in the front passenger seat, dressed in his SS uniform, peaked cap, no body armor. The escort car, a black sedan carrying 3 SS bodyguards, follows 50 meters behind. Gabčík steps off the curb into the street. He's 10 meters from the hairpin turn. The Mercedes begins to slow for the curve. Heydrich is visible, profile, blonde hair beneath the cap, relaxed posture. He's reading a document in his lap. Gabčík pulls the Sten gun from beneath his coat. The range is less than 5 meters. He squeezes the trigger. Nothing happens. The gun jams. The bolt is frozen, a mechanical failure. Gabčík squeezes again. He tries to rack the charging handle. The mechanism won't budge. 2 seconds have passed. Heydrich looks up. He sees Gabčík standing in the street with a British submachine gun pointed directly at him. For a fractional moment, everything freezes, then Klein reacts. He slams the brakes and reaches for his pistol. Heydrich stands up in the moving car. Instead of ordering Klein to accelerate away, instead of ducking, he stands and draws his own Luger pistol. It's the response of a man who's spent his entire career believing he's untouchable, that resistance is broken, that no one would dare. Kubish is already moving. He's 3 meters behind Gabčík on the curb. He sees the Sten gun fail. He sees Heydrich standing, drawing his weapon. Kubish pulls the modified grenade from his briefcase. He steps forward. He throws. The grenade arcs through the air, a 3-meter throw, chest high, directly at the Mercedes. It hits the rear fender just behind Heydrich and detonates. The explosion is massive, louder than anyone expected. The blast tears through the right side of the Mercedes, shredding the metal bodywork, blowing out the tires. The windows shatter. A cloud of smoke and debris erupts. The shrapnel, nails, bolts, fragments of grenade casing, shreds everything within a 5-meter radius. Kubish is thrown backward by the concussion. His face is torn. Shrapnel has ripped through his forehead and cheeks. Blood pours from the wounds. He staggers, half-blind, disoriented by the blast. Gabčík drops the jammed Sten gun and pulls his Colt pistol. He moves toward the smoking wreckage. Through the smoke, he sees Heydrich stumbling out of the passenger side. The SS officer is upright, moving, his uniform torn. He's still holding his Luger. He raises it and fires at Gabčík. The shot misses. Gabčík fires back 3 rounds. At least one hits Heydrich in the lower torso, but the Reichsprotector doesn't go down. He staggers, clutching his side, then collapses against the tram stop railing. Klein jumps from the driver's seat, pistol drawn, and sprints after Gabčík. The paratrooper runs south down the street, weaving between pedestrians who've scattered at the sound of the explosion. Klein fires twice. Both shots miss. Gabčík turns a corner into an alley, reaches his bicycle and pedals hard toward the safe house. Klein chases on foot for 2 blocks before losing him in the narrow side streets. Kubish, blood streaming down his face, stumbles toward his own bicycle. Pedestrians are screaming, running. A tram has stopped in the intersection, the driver frozen in shock. Kubish mounts the bicycle and rides north, wobbling, barely able to see through the blood. He disappears into the Lieben district. At the intersection, chaos. Heydrich is slumped against the railing, conscious but going into shock. Blood is soaking through his uniform at the abdomen and lower back. The grenade's shrapnel has torn through his body. Fragments have penetrated his spleen, diaphragm, and stomach. One piece of metal, possibly a spring from the car's upholstery, is lodged near his spine. Klein returns, breathing hard. The SS bodyguards arrive from the escort car, weapons drawn, shouting orders. A Czech delivery truck is commandeered at gunpoint. They load Heydrich into the back. Klein drives at high speed to the Bulovka hospital in Prague, the nearest facility. It's a civilian Czech hospital, not a German military installation. At 10:48 hours, 21 minutes after the attack, Heydrich is carried into the emergency ward. He's semi-conscious, pale, shivering. A Czech surgeon, Dr. Vladimir Snyder, examines him. The wounds are catastrophic. Shrapnel has perforated multiple internal organs. One fragment is lodged 3 centimeters from the spinal column. Heydrich is bleeding internally. Surgery begins immediately. Dr. Snyder removes the shrapnel piece by piece, nails, wire fragments, bits of leather from the car's upholstery. He repairs the torn spleen and diaphragm. Heydrich's vital signs stabilize. The surgery lasts 3 hours. By early afternoon, he's in recovery, sedated, his condition listed as critical but stable. Within hours, Heinrich Himmler dispatches his personal physician from Berlin, Dr. Karl Gebhardt, an SS surgeon. Hitler sends flowers and a personal message. The Nazi propaganda apparatus immediately labels the attack a cowardly ambush by British-trained terrorists. Radio broadcasts announce that Heydrich is recovering and that the perpetrators will be found and executed. But inside Bulovka Hospital, Heydrich's condition is deteriorating. The surgeons removed the visible shrapnel, but they couldn't sterilize the wound completely. Fragments of car upholstery, leather, and fabric have been driven deep into the tissue. Infection begins within 24 hours. By May 29th, Heydrich is feverish. His white blood cell count is spiking. Sepsis is setting in. Bacterial infection spreading through his bloodstream. Dr. Gebhardt, operating under direct orders from Himmler, refuses to use sulfonamide antibiotics. He believes they're unnecessary, that the surgery was successful. It's a catastrophic miscalculation. The infection spreads unchecked. Heydrich lingers for 9 days. His temperature spikes to 40 degrees Celsius. He drifts in and out of consciousness. His kidneys fail. Toxins flood his bloodstream. On June 4th, 1942, at 0430 hours, Reinhard Heydrich dies, the architect of the Holocaust, the butcher of Prague, the man Hitler called the man with the iron heart, killed by 7 men with a jammed gun and a modified grenade. The news reaches Hitler at the Wolfschanze, the Wolf's Lair, his military headquarters in East Prussia. He's informed at midday on June 4th. For several minutes, he says nothing. Then he erupts. Heydrich was more than a subordinate. He was Hitler's protégé, the embodiment of the SS ideal, intelligent, ruthless, operationally brilliant. Hitler had been grooming him as a potential successor. Now he's dead, killed in broad daylight in the heart of the Reich Protectorate by resistance fighters everyone believed were crushed. Hitler demands total vengeance, not arrests. All Gestapo and SS units in the Protectorate are mobilized, and entire villages will be liquidated as collective punishment. The machinery of Nazi reprisal operates with industrial efficiency. Within hours, Gestapo headquarters in Prague begins roundups. Every known resistance member, every family with suspected sympathies, every worker who was absent on May 27th, all are arrested. The Petchek Palace interrogation cells fill within 24 hours. Torture sessions run continuously. Suspects are beaten with rubber hoses, subjected to electric shocks, waterboarded, hung by their wrists until shoulders dislocate. The Gestapo wants names, addresses, safe houses. Anyone who helped the assassins. Most of the arrested know nothing. They're executed anyway. On June 9th, 5 days after Heydrich's death, the SS receives intelligence about Lidis, a mining village 22 kilometers northwest of Prague. An informant claims that resistance members from Lidis helped hide the paratroopers. The claim is unverified. It doesn't matter. SS Gruppenführer Karl Hermann Frank, acting Reichsprotector, in Heydrich's absence, orders the village erased. On the evening of June 9, Wehrmacht and SS units surround Lidice. It's a village of 503 people, miners, farmers, their families. Most are asleep when the trucks arrive. Soldiers seal every road. No one is allowed in or out. At dawn on June 10th, the operation begins. All men over the age of 16 are separated from the women and children. They're divided into groups of 10 and led to the courtyard of a farm on the village's edge. Mattresses are propped against the barn wall to prevent bullets from ricocheting. The executions begin. Each group is lined up facing the wall. An SS firing squad, 8 men, shoots them in the back. Takes all day. By evening, 173 men are dead. Their bodies are piled in the barn, then loaded into trucks and transported to mass graves outside Prague. The women and children are loaded into buses. There are 184 women. They're transported directly to Ravensbrück concentration camp in Germany. 17 are pregnant. They're forced to undergo abortions, then sent to the gas chambers. The rest are assigned to forced labor. Fewer than half will survive the war. The children, there are 98 of them, are taken to a temporary camp in Gneisenau. Nazi racial experts evaluate each child. 13 are selected for Germanization, blonde, blue-eyed, young enough to forget their Czech identity. They're adopted by SS families, given German names, raised as Reich citizens. The remaining 85 children are transported to Chelmno extermination camp in occupied Poland. They're murdered in gas vans within 48 hours of arrival. Then the village itself is destroyed. SS engineers plant explosives in every building, homes, the church, the school, the cemetery. The structures are demolished systematically. Bulldozers level the rubble. The cemetery is excavated, gravestones are smashed, remains exhumed and scattered. Trees are uprooted. The Gestapo erases Lidice from existence. The name is removed from maps. German authorities announced that the village of Lidice has ceased to exist, but Lidice is only the beginning. On June 24th, SS units surround Lijaki, another village suspected of harboring resistance members. The entire population, 33 people, is executed. The village is burned, every structure reduced to ash. Across the protectorate, the terror expands. In Prague, in Brno, in every city and town, the arrests continue. By the end of June, over 1,300 Czechs have been executed. Thousands more are transported to concentration camps. The Gestapo posts notices in every public square. Anyone providing shelter, food, or assistance to the assassins will be killed along with their entire family. The reprisals are designed to do more than punish. They're designed to isolate the paratroopers completely, to make every Czech family too terrified to offer help, to turn the entire population into potential informants. And it's working. Gabčík and Kubiš have gone to ground. Immediately after the attack, they fled to separate safe houses, then moved again within hours. Kubiš's face wounds from the grenade blast are severe. He stitched himself up using a mirror and a needle, no anesthesia, to avoid going to a hospital where identification checks are mandatory. Gabčík has shaved his head and grown a mustache to alter his appearance. But the safe houses are collapsing. Families that sheltered them before are disappearing, arrested in the night, taken to Petček Palace, never seen again. The remaining resistance network is fragmenting under the pressure. Dead drops are abandoned. Everyone is terrified. By mid-June, Gabčík and Kubiš are running out of options. Karol Boromejski Cathedral, the Czech Orthodox Cathedral of Saints, Cyril and Methodius in central Prague, offers sanctuary. Bishop Gorazd, the head of the Czech Orthodox Church, has agreed to hide them in the crypt beneath the church. It's a desperate gamble. The cathedral is in the middle of Prague, 2 blocks from a Wehrmacht patrol route. But it's also the last place the Gestapo would expect to find them. On June 17th, Gabčík, Kubiš, and 5 other paratroopers, men from separate missions who are also on the run, gather in the cathedral crypt. It's a narrow stone chamber beneath the nave, accessible only through a small entrance in the floor. No supplies beyond what they carry in. They have 40 rounds of ammunition between them, 2 pistols, 1 rifle, a few grenades, and outside 10,000 SS troops are tightening the net. The name Lidice reaches the world on June 11, 1942. Nazi propaganda initially tries to suppress details, just another security action in the protectorate. But the scale is too large, too complete. Refugees who escaped before the cordon report what they saw. Czech underground radio transmits fragments to London, and the Germans themselves, confident in their power, eventually announce it as a warning. The BBC broadcasts the news across Europe. Every woman deported, every child murdered or Germanized, the cemetery destroyed. The name removed from maps, the reaction is immediate and global. In Britain, newspapers run front-page stories. The Times calls it extermination. The Daily Telegraph publishes survivor testimonies. In the United States, radio broadcasts describe the massacre in detail. Mining towns in Illinois and Pennsylvania, communities with Czech immigrant populations, rename their streets Lidice Avenue. But the international outrage doesn't stop the Gestapo. The terror intensifies. In Prague, SS units conduct house-to-house searches. Every apartment building in working-class districts is raided. Identity papers are checked, ration cards examined. Anyone who can't account for their movements on May 27 is arrested. Workers who lived near the Holešovička intersection are interrogated. Did you see anything? Hear anything? Notice strangers? The Gestapo offers 10 million Reichsmarks for information leading to the assassin's capture. That's 50 million crowns in Czech currency, enough to live comfortably for decades. Posters appear on every street corner, photographs of Gabčík and Kubiš, grainy images reconstructed from intelligence reports and witness descriptions. The text reads, "Wanted for the murder of Reichsprotector Heydrich." Reward for information. Informants begin to surface, not resistance members, not committed collaborators, just ordinary people, desperate, terrified, tempted by the money or coerced by Gestapo threats. A shopkeeper reports 2 men who purchased unusual amounts of food. A landlady mentions tenants who kept irregular hours. A neighbor recalls strangers visiting a family's apartment after curfew. Each report leads to arrests. Each arrest leads to interrogations. Each interrogation produces more names. The resistance network begins to unravel. On June 13th, the Gestapo arrests the Moravec family. Josef Moravec, the senior resistance organizer who sheltered Gabčík and Kubiš, is taken to Petržek Palace. His wife Marie is arrested separately. Their son, Arta, 17 years old, is brought in for questioning. The Gestapo separates them. Josef is tortured first, beaten, electrocuted, suspended by his wrists. He reveals nothing. Marie, held in an adjacent cell, can hear his screams through the walls. She's told that if she cooperates, her family will be spared. She refuses to speak. Then the Gestapo brings in Arta. They place him in a room with his mother. Gestapo officers explain calmly she will watch her son tortured until she provides information, or she can talk now and he'll be released. Marie Moravec understands there's no release. Her son will be executed regardless. She will be executed, but she can control one thing. Whether the Gestapo learns where the paratroopers are hiding, she asks to use the toilet. It's a standard request. Prisoners are sometimes allowed basic necessities during interrogations to build false rapport. A female guard escorts her to a small bathroom down the hall. Marie Moravec has been carrying a cyanide capsule sewn into the lining of her dress. It's standard SOE protocol for resistance organizers, a final option if capture is imminent. She bites down on the capsule. The cyanide acts within seconds. She collapses, convulsing, dead before the guard can react. The Gestapo tortures Arta Moravec for 3 days. He's 17. He's subjected to electric shocks, beatings, near drowning. On the 3rd day he breaks. He provides names, addresses, he describes the safe houses. He mentions the cathedral, but he doesn't know which cathedral. Prague has dozens of churches. The paratroopers never told him the specific location. Compartmentalization to prevent exactly this scenario. Arta gives the Gestapo enough to narrow the search, but not enough to pinpoint the hiding place. The Gestapo executes him anyway. Josef Moravec is executed the same day. The bodies are disposed of in a mass grave. The Moravec family is erased from official records, but the information Arta provided is enough. The Gestapo begins surveillance of every church in central Prague. Orthodox, Catholic, Protestant, every denomination is watched. Agents monitor foot traffic, photograph visitors, track clergy movements. Meanwhile, the SS continues its cordon tactics, roadblocks on every major street, identity checks at random intervals, searches of basements and attics. By June 17th, the Gestapo has a list of 12 possible locations where the paratroopers might be hiding. Karol Boromejski Cathedral, the Cathedral of Saints Cyril and Methodius, is on that list. It's an unremarkable building on Reslova Street, orthodox, modest exterior, a small courtyard. The priest, Father Vladimir Petrek, is known to be sympathetic to the resistance, though the Gestapo has no proof. The cathedral hasn't been raided yet because it's in the middle of a busy commercial district, highly visible, difficult to cordon without attracting attention. But on the morning of June 18, a Gestapo informant reports something unusual. A parishioner claims he saw men entering the cathedral late at night through a side door. The men were carrying bags. They didn't leave. The Gestapo doesn't act immediately. They place the cathedral under surveillance, plainclothes agents watching the entrances, noting everyone who enters or exits. Inside the crypt, 7 men wait in darkness. Gabčík, Kubiš, Josef Valčík, the lookout from the assassination. Jan Hruby, the backup security. Adolf Opalka, a paratrooper from a separate mission, now trapped in Prague. Josef Bublik, Jan Kubis, no relation to Jan Kubiš, 7 men, 40 rounds of ammunition, no food. They've heard the broadcasts, the executions, the deportations, the obliteration of Lidis. They know their families are dead or soon will be. They know no rescue is coming. They have one advantage. The crypt is defensible. Stone walls, limited lines of fire for anyone trying to enter. If the Gestapo finds them, they can hold the entrance for minutes, maybe longer. Not long enough to escape, but long enough to make it costly. June 18th, 1942, 04:15 hours. The SS cordon closes around Karol Boromejski Cathedral. The operation is planned with military precision. 800 Waffen-SS soldiers, Gestapo agents, Wehrmacht infantry, armoured cars positioned at intersections 2 blocks in every direction, machine gun nests on rooftops overlooking Reslova Street. The entire district is sealed. No one enters, no one leaves. The information came from Karol Čurda. Čurda is a Czech paratrooper dropped into the Protectorate in March 1942 on a separate mission. He's not part of the Anthropoid team. He never participated in the assassination. But he knows some of the safe houses. He knows some of the families. And after Lidis, after watching the Gestapo erase an entire village, after seeing the execution notices posted in every square, he breaks. On June 16th, he walks into Gestapo headquarters on Brodowski Street and asks to speak to an officer. He provides names, addresses, he describes the resistance network. He mentions that paratroopers are hiding in a church. He doesn't know which one, but he knows it's Orthodox, somewhere in central Prague. The Gestapo pays him 1 million crowns immediately. They promise full immunity. Then they use his information to narrow the search. By June 17th, they've identified Karol Boromejski Cathedral. Surveillance confirms unusual activity, men entering at night, no one exiting. On the evening of June 17th, SS Gruppenführer Karl Hermann Frank authorizes the raid. The attack will begin at dawn. No surrender. At 04:15 hours, the cordon is complete. Waffen-SS troops take positions around the cathedral. MG-42 machine guns are set up, covering the main entrance and the side doors. Armoured cars block Reslova Street at both ends. Fire trucks are positioned nearby, not for rescue, but to pump water or gas into the building if necessary. At 04:20 hours, SS troops breach the main entrance. They move through the nave in squad formation, weapons raised, searching. The cathedral is empty, the altar undisturbed. An officer orders a systematic search. Troops check the bell tower, the vestry, the sacristy. Nothing. Then someone notices the crypt entrance, a small opening in the floor near the altar, partially concealed by a rug. It's covered with a heavy stone slab. The SS lifts the slab. A narrow stone staircase descends into darkness. The opening is less than a meter wide. The stairs are steep. There's no light below. 3 SS soldiers descend. Flashlights, MP-40 submachine guns ready. They reach the bottom, a stone chamber, low ceiling, maybe 20 square meters. The flashlights sweep the space. Gunfire erupts from the darkness. The 3 SS soldiers are hit immediately, bullets tearing through their uniforms at close range. One dies instantly. The other 2 collapse on the stairs, screaming. The SS troops above drag them up. Blood trails across the stone steps. Adolf Opalka, the senior paratrooper in the crypt, is positioned at the base of the stairs with a pistol. He's fired the first shots. Now the other 6 men take defensive positions. They know this is the end. No surrender, no capture. They'll hold the stairs as long as their ammunition lasts. The SS tries again. 4 soldiers descend in rapid succession, firing blindly into the crypt. Muzzle flashes light up the stone chamber. Opalka returns fire. 3 shots. 1 SS soldier is hit in the leg. They retreat. The SS officer in command, Hauptsturmführer Wolf, reassesses. The crypt entrance is a fatal funnel. Any soldier descending is silhouetted against the light above, an easy target for defenders below. Frontal assault is suicidal. He orders grenades. SS troops drop stick grenades down the stairwell. The explosions are deafening in the confined space, concussion waves slamming off stone walls. Smoke fills the crypt. The paratroopers, pressed against the walls, are battered by the blasts but not incapacitated. Opalka fires back blindly up the stairs. The SS drops more grenades. 6, 8, 10. The explosions tear chunks of stone from the walls. Dust and smoke make it impossible to see. Opalka is wounded, shrapnel in his shoulder and side. Josef Bublik takes over the stairwell defense. He fires his pistol up the stairs, 4 shots. 3 more grenades detonate. The SS tries another assault. 6 soldiers descend together, firing continuously. Bublik empties his pistol into them, hits 2. The SS retreats again, dragging wounded men up the stairs. Hauptsturmführer Wolf realizes he's losing men faster than he's inflicting casualties. He pulls his troops back and calls for reinforcements. Outside, more SS units arrive. Fire trucks move closer. The decision is made. They'll flood the crypt. Fire hoses are brought into the nave. The nozzles are positioned at the top of the stairwell. The water starts. High-pressure streams pour down the stairs, thousands of liters per minute. The water cascades into the crypt, pooling on the stone floor. The paratroopers, already exhausted from the grenade blasts, try to block the flow with anything available: coats, debris, stones. It's useless. The water rises. Within 15 minutes, the crypt floor is submerged under ½ a meter of water. The paratroopers are standing in freezing water up to their knees, then their waists. They're soaked, shivering. The water continues to rise. The paratroopers know they're going to drown. They have perhaps 10 minutes before the water reaches the ceiling. They check their ammunition. Opalka has 3 rounds left. Kubish has 2. Gabčík has 4. They make a decision. The water in the crypt reaches chest height. The 7 paratroopers are pressed against the walls, holding their weapons above the rising flood. The stone chamber has become a tomb, filling with ice-cold water, pumped from Prague's mains. The temperature is near freezing. Hypothermia is setting in. Shivering, numbness in fingers and toes, slurred speech. Adolf Opalka shouts orders over the roar of water. They'll fire their remaining ammunition at the entrance, then use their last bullets on themselves. No names given under torture that could lead the Gestapo to any remaining safe houses. Above them, Hauptsturmführer Wolf waits. He's positioned 50 SS troops around the cathedral. Machine gun teams cover every exit. Snipers watch from windows across the street. He's lost 11 men so far, 3 dead, 8 wounded. The crypt entrance is still defended. He orders the water pressure increased, but something changes in the cathedral's main floor. The SS troops in the nave hear movement from a different location, scratching sounds, stone scraping against stone. It's coming from the choir loft, a raised gallery at the back of the church, overlooking the nave. There's a ventilation grate in the loft floor. The grate is moving. 3 SS soldiers move to investigate. As they approach, gunfire erupts from the grate. Bullets punch through the narrow opening, 3 rapid shots. 1 SS soldier is hit in the chest. The others dive for cover behind pews. 4 paratroopers are up there. When the assault began at 04:15, the 7 men split up. 3, Opalka, Bublik, and Jan Kubis, took the crypt stairwell. 4 others, Gabčík, Kubish, Valčík, and Hruby, climbed to the choir loft. It was a tactical decision. Defend 2 positions, split the SS assault force, buy time. The choir loft has windows overlooking Reslova Street. It has the ventilation grate offering a firing position down into the nave, but it also has no exit. The staircase to the loft is exposed to the main entrance. Once the SS entered the cathedral, the 4 men in the loft were trapped. They'd been waiting for 2 hours. Now at 06:20 hours, the SS focuses on the loft. Troops take positions behind pews, pillars, anything offering cover. An MG-42 machine gun is set up aimed at the loft balcony. The SS fires controlled bursts, 200 rounds per minute, chewing through the wooden balustrade, splintering the rail, tearing chunks from the plaster walls. Gabčík returns fire through the ventilation grate. 2 shots. He's conserving ammunition. He has maybe 10 rounds left. The SS tries to storm the loft staircase. 4 soldiers sprint up the narrow steps. Valchik leans over the damaged balustrade and fires down at them. 3 shots from his pistol. The firefight settles into a brutal standoff. The SS fires continuously at the loft. The paratroopers fire back in short bursts, conserving every round. Kubish, still bleeding from his face wounds from the May 27th grenade blast, positions himself at the window. He fires at SS troops in the street below. 2 shots. One hits an SS officer near an armored car. At 06:45 hours, the SS brings in tear gas. Canisters are thrown into the loft through the shattered windows. The gas fills the space immediately. White smoke, burning eyes, choking throats. The paratroopers wrap cloth around their faces. It doesn't help. The gas is overwhelming. They're coughing, eyes streaming, barely able to see. Gabčík fires blindly through the smoke toward the staircase. 3 more shots. The slide locks back. Empty. He reloads his last magazine. 4 rounds. The SS storms the loft again. 8 soldiers this time, rushing the stairs in a coordinated assault. Gabčík, Valchik, and Hruby fire simultaneously. The staircase is a killing zone. Muzzle flashes lighting up the tear gas smoke. 2 SS soldiers go down. The rest retreat. But the ammunition is running out. At 0700 hours, Gabčík has 2 rounds left. Kubish has 1. Valchik's pistol is empty. He's been using it as a club. Hruby has 3 rounds. Below them, in the crypt, the water has reached the ceiling. The fire hoses are still pumping. In the crypt, the water is now at neck height. The 3 men are tilting their heads back, gasping for air in the shrinking pocket against the stone ceiling. The flashlight they've been using is submerged. They're in total darkness. The cold has robbed them of feeling in their extremities. Opalka tries to speak, his voice barely a whisper. They understand. They each have 1 bullet left. 3 gunshots echo from the crypt, muffled by water and stone, but unmistakable. The fire hoses continue pumping for another 10 minutes before the SS shuts them off. When they drain the crypt hours later, they'll find 3 bodies floating face down in chest-deep water. Each man shot himself rather than surrender. In the choir loft, Gabčík hears the shots from below. SS troops are massing for another assault. Gabčík raises his pistol to his own head. 4 more shots. The gunfire from the choir loft stops. The SS waits 5 minutes, then advances cautiously up the stairs. They find 4 bodies. Gabčík is slumped against the wall, pistol still in his hand. Kubish is near the window, blood pooling beneath him. Valchik and Hruby are side by side near the ventilation grate. 7 men. 4 hours. They've killed 14 Waffen-SS soldiers, wounded 21 more. They've held 800 troops at bay inside a single cathedral. They've forced the SS to flood the crypt, deploy machine guns, use tear gas, and expend thousands of rounds of ammunition, and they've died without giving up a single name. The bodies are dragged from the cathedral at 800 hours. The SS photographs them for identification, faces battered by gunfire and grenade blasts, uniforms soaked with water and blood. Gestapo forensic teams examine the corpses, searching pockets for documents, papers, anything that might reveal additional safe houses or resistance contacts. They find nothing. The paratroopers carried no identification, no addresses, no maps. They've followed SOE protocol perfectly. Even in death, they've protected the network, but the Gestapo doesn't need documents. They have Karel Čurda. Čurda, the informant who provided the initial intelligence, is brought to the cathedral. He's led through the nave, past the bullet-scarred pews and bloodstains, down to the crypt, where the water is still being pumped out. The SS lays out the 7 bodies in a row on the cathedral floor. Čurda is ordered to identify each one. He walks along the line, points, names them. Čurda receives another payment, 500,000 crowns. He'll receive the full reward of 10 million crowns within weeks. The bodies are taken to the Bulovka Hospital morgue, the same facility where Heydrich died 5 weeks earlier. Nazi officials photograph the corpses again. this time for propaganda purposes. The images will be published in German, newspapers under headlines like "Terrorists Eliminated" and "British Murderers Destroyed." But the reprisals are far from over. The Gestapo immediately arrests everyone connected to the cathedral. Bishop Gorazd, the head of the Czech Orthodox Church who authorized sanctuary, is taken to Petříček Palace. He's interrogated for 3 days. The Gestapo wants names of parishioners who knew about the hiding place, resistance members who used the church, anyone who provided support. Gorazd refuses to cooperate. He's tortured, electric shocks, beatings, near drowning. On the 3rd day, he makes a statement. He accepts full responsibility for sheltering the paratroopers. He insists that no one else in the church knew. He asks that the Orthodox community be spared. The Gestapo ignores his request. On September 4, 1942, Bishop Gorazd is executed by firing squad. Father Vladimir Petrek, the priest who helped hide the paratroopers, is executed the same day. 2 other priests are sent to concentration camps where they die within months. The entire Orthodox Church in the Protectorate is dissolved. Every Orthodox church building is seized by the state. Services are banned. Clergy are arrested or forced into exile. The denomination is erased from official recognition. But the hunt for collaborators continues. Every family that sheltered the paratroopers, even briefly, is targeted. The Gestapo uses Churda's information to map the entire resistance network, addresses, names, connections. The arrests happen simultaneously across Prague. Coordinated raids added 300 hours on June 24th. The Novak family, who hid Gabčík for 3 nights in March. The father is executed. The mother and 2 children are sent to Ravensbrück. The Ogun family, who provided false identity papers. Entire family executed. The Farfek family, who stored weapons in their basement. The father is hanged in Petříček Palace. The mother and daughter are sent to Auschwitz. By the end of June, 252 family members, men, women, children, are executed or deported for providing assistance to the paratroopers. Most never knew the assassins' identities. Most provided help for a single night, maybe 2. The Gestapo's policy is collective punishment. Help a terrorist, your family dies. The executions are public. Bodies are displayed in Prague squares with signs. This is what happens to those who help British agents. The message is clear. Resistance is futile. Cooperation with the Reich is the only option for survival, and for a time, it works. By July 1942, resistance activity in the Protectorate has effectively ceased. The networks are shattered. The families are terrified. Sabotage incidents drop to near zero. Worker productivity increases. The Gestapo declares the pacification successful, but something has changed that the Nazis don't fully comprehend. Before May 27th, Czechoslovakia was disappearing. The world was forgetting. The Allies were beginning to accept that the Munich Agreement, the 1938 betrayal that carved up Czechoslovakia, might be permanent, that the Protectorate was simply German territory now. That Czech collaboration was complete. The assassination and its aftermath shatter that perception. The British government, which had tentatively considered recognizing the Munich Agreement as legitimate, reverses course. On August 5, 1942, the British Foreign Office formally declares the Munich Agreement void from its inception. Czechoslovakia's pre-1938 borders are recognized. The government in exile in London is granted full diplomatic status. France follows, then the United States. The Soviet Union, which had its own designs on Czech territory, is forced to recognize Czech sovereignty. Suddenly, Czechoslovakia exists again, not on the ground. The Protectorate is still under Nazi occupation, but diplomatically, legally, in the eyes of the Allied powers. President Beneš's gamble has succeeded. The assassination proved that Czechs were still fighting, that collaboration was not universal, that the nation had not accepted its erasure. The cost was catastrophic. Over 1,300 executions. Lidis erased, the Orthodox Church destroyed, the resistance networks annihilated. 7 paratroopers dead in a flooded crypt. But Czechoslovakia survived as a concept, as a state that would be restored when the war ended. and Karel Čerda, the informant, becomes the most hated man in Czech history. After the war, he's arrested by the restored Czechoslovak government. His trial lasts 3 days. The evidence is overwhelming: Gestapo payment records, witness testimonies, his own signed statements. He's convicted of treason and sentenced to death. On April 29, 1947, Karel Čerda is hanged in Prague's Pankrak prison. His name becomes synonymous with betrayal in Czech culture. For decades, parents use it as a cautionary tale. Don't be a Čerda. The families of the 7 paratroopers are honored. Memorials are erected. Streets are renamed. In 1947, all 7 men are posthumously promoted and awarded Czechoslovakia's highest military honors. Karel Boromejský Cathedral is restored. The crypt where 3 men drowned is preserved as a memorial. The bullet holes in the choir loft are left unrepaired. Visitors can still see them, scars in the plaster and wood, evidence of the 4-hour firefight. The cathedral becomes a pilgrimage site, a place where Czechs remember what resistance cost. It was still dark outside when the pumps began. 4 hours of gunfire had finally given way to an eerie pause, the kind that doesn't mean safety, only a change in tactics. The SS engineers moved like surgeons, fire hoses uncoiled across the cobblestones of Reslova Street, their steel couplings clinking as they connected to the city's hydrants. Inside the church of Saints Cyril and Methodius, 7 Czech paratroopers, exhausted, half-deaf, soaked in their own sweat and gunpowder dust, could hear the hiss of water before they saw it. Down in the crypt, the air already hung heavy. Gun smoke, plaster dust, the iron smell of spent shells. Their boots sank into puddles formed by shattered holy water basins and broken stone. They knew what was coming. The SS were going to drown them out. Lieutenant Adolf Opálka gave a short, quiet order. Positions. Each man knew his corner, his line of fire. Jan Kubiš, pale from blood loss, still clutching his sten, pressed his back to the wall near the stairwell. Josef Valčík crouched by the drainage slit, flashlight off, listening to the echo of boots above. They had around 40 rounds left, maybe less. When the first surge of water came roaring down the stairwell, it carried spent casings and debris with it. The men fired blindly toward the sound of German voices, bullets ricocheting off wet stone. The SS had broken through the upper nave hours earlier, and now they were using fire hoses and tear gas canisters in tandem. The smell of chlorine mixed with gun oil. Water climbed the steps in seconds, ankle deep, then to the knees. The stens began to jam. Soaked powder and silt clogged the bolts. They switched to pistols. Outside, Obergruppenführer Karl von Treuenfeld gave orders through a loudspeaker. "Surrender, you will be spared." Inside, the men looked at one another and understood the lie. They had seen what spared meant in Lidis. Valčík tore open a waterproof capsule. The cyanide ampules were still intact. He handed them out without a word. The noise became a constant roar. Water, gunfire, shouted commands echoing through the stone. Bullets cracked through the small ventilation windows. Kubiš fell first, hit in the leg and chest. Opálka dragged him back under the statue of St. Methodius, shouting for the others to conserve ammo. Minutes turned to seconds. The crypt was nearly waist-deep now. The Germans began drilling through the ceiling, dropping stun grenades through the holes. Each blast shook centuries of dust from the walls. One grenade detonated inches from Valčík's position. He didn't scream, only pressed his face into the water to muffle the coughs. When Opálka realized the line was finished, he gave the last order of his life. Now, one by one, the remaining men raised their pistols to their temples or bit down on the ampules. The gunfire stopped. Only the flood remained. The Germans hauled the bodies out, one by one. They found letters, medals, small icons wrapped in oilcloth. The fight for Prague's soul had lasted 6 hours against 10,000 men. Above ground, the city was silent. The pumps shut off. The hoses were reeled back. Only the soaked flag of Czechoslovakia remained in the rubble, folded once, then taken away as evidence. Their deaths weren't a defeat. They were the final act of defiance, written in the water-stained stone beneath the church. By the time Prague fell silent, the rain had started, a grey, steady drizzle that washed the blood from the cobblestones, but not the memory of what had happened beneath them. The church was sealed off. The Gestapo marked it as a crime site. Photographers arrived. Engineers drained the crypt and catalogued the weapons, each labelled with a tag that read, British origin. Berlin was furious, but also humiliated. Reinhard Heydrich, the man Hitler once called the Iron Heart of the Reich, had been killed by a handful of Czech exiles with bicycles, fake ration cards, and British grenades. The most powerful intelligence state in Europe, undone by 7 men with a plan that should have failed. The SS tried to turn the massacre into propaganda. Posters declared justice for Heydrich. If Heydrich, head of the Reich Main Security Office, architect of the final solution, could be assassinated in broad daylight in his own city, what else was vulnerable? Across Europe, resistance groups studied Anthropoid like scripture. In France, Belgium, Poland, and Yugoslavia, men whispered the paratroopers' names in cellars and attics. The message was simple. The Reich could bleed. The price was catastrophic. Every man connected, even distantly, to the resistance, gone. But the British government, the exiled Czech leadership, and the Allies in London understood what had shifted. The operation forced Hitler's hand. He ordered troops to be pulled from the Eastern Front to tighten security across occupied Europe. Every soldier recalled was one less fighting in Stalingrad, Tobruk, or Kursk. A week after the assassins' deaths, Reich officials quietly ordered that Heydrich's files be split among 3 departments. No one man would ever again hold that much power. Even within the SS, his memory became a ghost, a reminder of ambition punished by fate. For Czechoslovakia, Anthropoid became the spine of its national identity. In 1945, when the Allies liberated Prague, people carried portraits of Gabčík and Kubiš through the streets like saints. In the years after the war, when the Iron Curtain divided Europe, even communist historians couldn't erase what the 7 men had done in that church. They were trained in England, armed by the British, betrayed by fear, but remembered by the world as proof that even the smallest act of resistance could shake an empire. Proof that occupation doesn't erase courage. Proof that freedom sometimes requires 7 men standing waist-deep in a flooded crypt, refusing to kneel. The last German soldier left the church at dusk. They'd found no survivors, no documents, no intelligence, only courage carved into the walls. And in that silence, Prague finally exhaled.